Hey everybody, Tom Barnes stories from the 78. I can't believe I'm talking about this already. It's summertime still, but yet fall is creeping in. Back to school is happening right now, and people are buying their fall clothes. And you think about fall, you think about a nice fire, a great book. What about a great book of poetry? I'm talking to Bruce Willard, who's written 3 collections of beautiful poetry, and he has a series that he hosts at the Blue Raven Gallery called the Blue Raven Poetry Series. I welcome now for this story from the 78, Bruce. How are you?
Hey Tom, I'm good. How are you?
I'm envious. You are on the central coast of Maine, you said, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful coast of Maine. It's a perfect day here after a kind of a sweltering hot August so far, and it's clear, dry, wind from the north, and it's beautiful.
So, what big town are you close to in the central part of Maine that people might know?
We are closest to, or I should say, Blue Raven Gallery is in Rockland, which is
Rockland.
pretty much right in the middle of the coast. It's hour and 45 minutes north of Portland, maybe an hour and a half from Bangor.
Oh, fantastic. And if folks have never been to Maine, this is probably one of the best times to go, like end of August into September. The weather is just beautiful. I mean, I don't know what the definition of Maine sweltering heat is, but I'm talking to you from Chicago, where most of August has been like 95 and like 98% humidity. So pretty warm. But I'm guessing Maine, it was probably a little bit more tolerable out to the north east there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was a warm summer, but it's a great time to be here. Really, July and August, peak of summer, and that goes in September, October are absolutely beautiful too. A little less busy, a little drier air, but it's a good time to visit the coast.
And you mentioned the Blue Raven Gallery, and that is a space where you have the Blue Raven poetry reading series, correct?
Exactly. My wife and I have long visited Rockland. I'm originally from Maine, and she has always had an interest in purchasing the old bank building that was an art gallery there for many years before. And when the prior owner decided to sell, he called her up and she snapped it up, turned it into a beautiful art gallery, and we talked about the idea of doing a poetry series there. And something I've always wanted to do, and it seemed the perfect time, especially after COVID, where
Hmm.
so much was Zoom. I was kind of zoomed out, and I
And here we
really
are
wanted.
again.
Here we are, but I wanted an opportunity to have a live poetry series where I could invite sort of nationally recognized poets and also local or regional poets to read out loud. And the gallery space is beautiful. And it holds about 100 people, and we've been, very fortunate to have some fabulous poets in there.
Well, why don't you run down a list of some of the ones that folks might recognize if they're in the poetry reading
Yeah,
world that they
absolutely.
love?
So last year in 2024, we started out the series with the incomparable Ed Hirsch, who is a wonderfully established poet and also a great cataloger of poetry with many anthologies. And so he read with a local Maine poet, Gibson Fay LeBlanc, who runs the Maine Writers and Publishers Association. We followed that up with Jennifer Groats, and she read with a local Maine poet, Sama'a Abdurakib. Tim Siebels came in August and read with Adrian Blevins, and then we ended up with Major Jackson, who read with Albert Abanato in September. And so it's a 4-part series. Usually it's free, it's open to the public. It's our sort of gift to the community, and we do those 4 sessions, and then we did 4 again this year. We've done 2 so far in 2025. Garrett Hongo read with Lauren K. Wattle, and Kwame Dawes read with Julia Bausma, 2 actual poet laureates. One, the
Wow.
poet laureate of Jamaica, and the other, the poet
Wow.
laureate of Maine. A very cool session. And now we have just 2 left this year. one this week, this Wednesday, where Catherine Barnett reads with Myron Hardy, and Nathan McLean will read with Marcia De La O in September.
Wow. So this Wednesday, the next one, and then another in September before it gets a little chilly up in the Maine area. But I imagine being in Rockland, and you said you were from Maine, correct?
Yeah, from Maine, most of my time. Not born here, but more time here, and I think of this as home.
And I was reading a little bit about you, and I stumbled upon an interview where you had talked about working at LL Bean. And that's kind of where, in that phase of your life, that's where you started to dive in a little bit, delve in, if you will, to writing poetry and discovering it. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I went to school in Vermont and came to Maine right afterwards, and um, ended up working as a DJ at nights, and
Like at a
needed
radio
some
station DJ?
at a FM radio station in
Very
Portland,
cool.
and I needed some place to put a little bit more dollars on the table, and so I I ended up picking up a job in the warehouse at LL Bean. I ended up staying for 10 years and did many things, but I was there at the warehouse for a while.
You can't get much more Maine than working at LL Bean. Like that's
It,
such, you know what I mean?
it
Like when you
is
hear
Maine.
about Maine, those are one of the companies that pop into your brain, right?
Yep, it is Maine. A great organization, and they treat their people well. They treat their customers well. It was a good place to be.
And you said you were a radio DJ. That's fascinating. I was a radio DJ in a former life as well. And you said you worked at a rock station, right?
It wasn't a rock station. I started as a lot of people do in college. I had
Mhm.
an FM show in college. It was a jazz show.
Oh, a jazz
I,
show.
I love jazz, and when I ended up coming to Maine, of course, there's no opportunity, or there wasn't any for jazz, but the local radio station was a rock station, and I enjoyed that.
Did you go by an on-air name other than your actual name? Did you have like one of those fancy radio DJ names that people
No,
use?
nothing like that. It was just my straight name, and if I made it through the night without falling asleep and without stumbling, I felt I was a successful walk away.
I mean, getting on the air and talking the way radio DJs maybe did more than they do now, right? Back
Yeah.
then, a lot of things were live. Now, a lot of things are not. But there was, if you will, some version of poetry when at least a really good radio DJ would talk about the music and weave a little story when the music's starting to play in the background, and they just set it up where then the song plays. And if you have that favorite radio DJ of yesteryear, they create these little miniature stories throughout the night. There's a radio station in Chicago called WXRT that is very
Mhm.
much a station that has the DJ live DJs for one that still do that. So it's interesting that you did that. You clearly an artist, right? You work in radio, and tell me how you found your way into poetry after doing your thing at LL Bean, or while doing your thing at LL Bean, but definitely being in the scene in Portland. Portland's a cool town. I imagine a lot of inspiration that happened when you were there to finally get yourself into poetry.
Yeah, it's something I started in college. I just enjoyed writing. I had a chance to work with some wonderful writers, some great poets in college, study quite a few, and of course up here in the land of Robert Frost and
Yeah.
others, there's a real love of literature and of poetry. And I wrote right out of college all the way along, even through the different business things. I'd wake up in the morning and spend 2, 3 hours writing before I went into work. So it's always been a part of the day. And
Hmm.
I like to think that maybe even there was a certain balance between business and poetry. They don't mix, of course, but maybe one kind of fed off the other in certain ways. Um, so yeah, it's always been something that's been a big part of my life. It wasn't until I sold one of my companies that I was able to really go back, and I was close to 50, 50, 55 by the time I went back and got my master's degree and really wrote more seriously. But I had been writing since 20, 25 years old.
So you mentioned one of your companies. What kind of companies? So I imagine you did other things in life that afforded you the ability to
Sure.
write now.
Yeah, because in a really good year, maybe my poetry produces $100 or $200 of income. So, it's not something you do for money. So, always had other jobs.
Right.
and always been in the merchandising product development area. Not necessarily outdoors like LL Bean, men's fashion,
But
women's
you had
fashion.
your own fashion. You created something years ago, yes?
Yep, I had a company I created in originally in Santa Barbara called the Territory Ahead, with that the clip taken from the last couple sentences of Huck Finn, where Huck says, "I reckon I best light out for the territory ahead of the rest. Aunt Sally wants to adopt me and civilize me, and I can't stand it. I've been there before." So I started the Territory Head, which was a men's clothing company back in the 1980s, and had an opportunity to grow that pretty nicely. And then I got involved in other businesses along the way too.
And now you're back in Maine, and hosting this poetry series at the
Yep.
Blue Raven Gallery. Going to that area of the world, specifically if you're honing in on the United States, what is it about the New England and that? I mean, if anybody's been to Maine, you know what it looks like. The topography, the landscape. It's beautiful. It's inspiring. What is it though that makes you want to be creative, or you feel creative, or you feed off of your environment to be creative?
Yeah, there's a great. I'm trying to remember what Ed Hirsch said, that who was our first reader. He said poetry speaks out of a solitude to a solitude. And
Hmm.
I think there's something very special about Maine's solitude, that is a wonderful home for literature, poetry, and all the arts. The arts are quite vibrant here, and the painting scene, the sculpture scene, pottery. There's music. There's for a sparsely populated state, really a proud collection of different artists. And so there's something about the solitude. There's also something just about the rawness of it here. There's a lot of grit in Maine, from the grit of the rocks on the coast to the forests and just the land. And that grit, I like to think of as a real support, particularly for lyric poetry, because there's a grind, if you will, that comes that's sort of at the heart of lyric poetry, and the grind which produces the dissonance of its sound and the dissonance of the words really have a home here, and so uh, I think there's a bunch of reasons it works well.
And it sounds just you describing Rockland and your story of how you and your wife found the Blue Raven Gallery and this poetry series happening at the Blue Raven. It sounds like a movie. It sounds like almost like a poem. Honestly, when I was reading about it, I got a list of people and things that I had an idea, that somebody was telling me about, like, oh, there's a fun story here, there's a fun story there. And then I saw this, it was the last one on the bottom, and it was just this series in Rockland, Maine, and Maine caught my attention. But then hearing your story now, I'm like making this movie version in my head of what you guys did, and it sounds lovely. It looks lovely. I imagine Rockland is a beautiful place that is very Maine like, with just
An
the
old
things that you
it's an
speak
old
about.
fishing town, an old quarry town that's been reinvented, that's reinvented itself many times over, and it's a perfect place for the gallery. And what my wife Jody has done in curating the gallery, the mix 4 floors of art, even including a rooftop sculpture garden. It's really pretty spectacular.
Did you say 4 floors?
4 floors, yeah, a basement,
Wow.
two main floors, and then a rooftop garden. So it's a nice full space.
And if folks want to learn a little bit more about the gallery, or perhaps if they're an artist that wants, to submit something to either the poetry readings or the art, what's the best way for people to find out information about all of that?
Really, the best thing is just go onto the website for the gallery, which is Blue Raven Gallery, all one word.com. And there you'll see images of what the gallery looks like. You'll see a lot about the different artists that my wife curates and puts together in the space. And there's a tab for the poetry series. which not only has a list of all the events, but video clips of all the past events. So you can kind of see what they're like and even enjoy some of the ones I mentioned earlier.
What is your favorite thing about where you're at in your life now with this poetry reading and doing this at the gallery? I mean, there's so much to love. Like, what's your favorite thing about this entire thing?
I really enjoy just sharing poetry and poets that I really admire and have been meaningful to me with just a wider group, wider audience of people, and particularly with people here in Maine. It's a way of sort of hosting a poetry party and inviting the public to come for free and enjoy stuff that is really remarkable.
And they can see some of those remarkable things this Wednesday, correct?
This Wednesday, yeah, Catherine Barnett will be reading with Myron Hardy this Wednesday at 7 o'clock. It's a great experience.
And Bruce,
So
you'll be hosting this event, right? You'll be kind of the grand master, if you will, when everybody's coming in. You'll shuffle people to there to listen, to enjoy, and to really take in art in a great setting within a art gallery. That's incredible. So it
yeah,
sounds like a lot of fun.
yeah, I think it's a pretty special event.
Well, Bruce, thank you for taking time to chat with me. I look forward to visiting the gallery in Rockland, Maine. I have not been there, so that is next on my list when I head to Maine.
It'd be great to have you come, and we'd have to finish it off with a lobster roll
Oh,
someplace.
absolutely. I've done that before, so I'll definitely do that again. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it.